This is Southern Cross News with Joe Palmer.
Pressure is mounting on the federal government to reinstate Australian Federal Police at the Hobart Airport. Opposition leader Bill Shorten made a flying visit to Tasmania today, committing $13 million to an AFP presence if elected.
It's not an election campaign, but the federal opposition leader was kissing babies and making commitments.
We need to make sure that we have the AFP at our capital city airports, making sure that people are safe.
Bill Shorten making the flying visit to promise 16 Australian Federal Police officers at the Hobart Airport if elected, following cuts made by the federal government in 2014.
We make the decision on where our police resources are based on the advice of our security agencies, the Australian Federal Police, the Office of Transport Security and others.
It's an ongoing campaign by the police union to restore AFP as Tasmania Police cover the workload, a campaign supported by AFP and the state government.
Our state, I want their state police doing state policing issues. We're out there to answer calls for service, to patrol.
We've got no idea what goes through this airport, and you can only sort of envisage what might be happening through this airport without that presence and being there all the time. Part of it's a deterrent, part of it's an investigative process.
A $13 million commitment, some say, is unnecessary.
It'll be out of taxpayers' pockets for a purpose that is deemed, at this stage, not necessary by those that make the proper assessments.
We can more than easily afford to prioritise the security of Tasmanians over tax cuts for multinationals and millionaires.
The state opposition spruiking a win as the Premier continues to make the case to the federal government.
Labor has been lobbying very hard, both at a federal level and at a state level, asking Will Hodgman to advocate on Tasmania's behalf to have federal police return to the Hobart Airport.
The comments from Mr Shorten are totally meaningless. The federal election's not due for another 2 years, so it means nothing.
Jacqueline Robson, Southern Cross News.
The government has confirmed part of Risdon Prison was placed into lockdown yesterday. Some prisoners refused to go back to their cells in a post-lunchtime protest, but the prison service says they complied after being spoken to.
This occurs from time to time in the prison system, and the safety and security of the inmates as well as the correctional officers and the staff is a top priority, and that remains the case.
Unions and prison advocates have raised concerns about staffing levels and overcrowding at the facility, but the government says it has been recruiting more officers. Salmon company Tassal says it's back on track, now complying with regulations for Aquaculture Stewardship Council certification. But environmentalists remain critical, saying a global conservation organisation involved in ASC shouldn't be accepting money from Tassal.
According to these industry players, ticking all boxes on this list means achieving the gold star of aquaculture industry certification.
To set global standards for aquaculture because of the need to communicate in a global marketplace about responsible production in fish farming.
After not conforming to 4 major ASC standards earlier this year, Tassal says it's now back on track in Macquarie Harbour. It says the problems, including fish welfare, marine dead zones and transparency issues around auditing, have been solved.
Well, the 154 compliance points that we have to meet to maintain that standard pushes us to be one of the most transparent organisations in the world when it comes to salmon farming.
But the rough seas surrounding the industry haven't calmed. Environment Tasmania today critical of an ongoing partnership between Tassal and one of the founding companies of the Aquaculture Stewardship Council Worldwide Fund. Yearly, Tassal pays the organisation more than $250,000.
At the end of the day, consumers don't want a sustainability tick that the companies purchase. They need to know that the person in charge of that accreditation is truly independent.
But WWF rebukes the claim, saying there is no longer an exclusive partnership between the two, and it works with Tassal to help it conform to certification.
That we work with some of the biggest producers that have the potential to actually cause significant environmental impacts and help them transform to sustainable practices.
They work right across our organisations, from the science to the technical to even, really helping us with our community engagements.
Louise Hedger, Southern Cross News.
Tasmania Police is celebrating a milestone for women in policing as a new round of recruits show just how far the service has come. Almost 50% of this year's new recruits are female, with 2 landing top of the class.
Pretty excited. It's pretty nerve-wracking, but it's also really good to get out and get into the real job.
When I joined back in the late 70s, we probably had about 3-4% of women within the policing, compared to 33% now.
It's been 100 years since women were first introduced into the Tasmania Police workforce. A church cafe's closure announcement online after a decade of serving the community has created quite a stir. The mother and son behind the Perth eatery Utsi says closing was always going to be tough, but 13,000 people noticing is certainly surprising.
It's been a joint labour of love from the very beginning. Mum Colette and son Julian set out converting this quaint church space 10 years ago.
I've always wanted to be a chef, and my grandparents owned a restaurant down the road about 20 years ago, so yeah.
It's been a great experience. It's a lovely thing to do, and I think old buildings need to be looked after, and converting the church into a cafe is one way of doing that.
Located in the heart of Perth, the cafe has been a hit, and it's also featured in several travel magazines.
Has it become sort of a hidden gem that everyone knows about?
Yes, it's kind of like that now. Yes, we get a lot of support from people from Launceston and the surrounding district, and even people just travelling from Hobart to Launceston, coming down from Devonport.
The locally sourced fresh produce menu has proven popular, but now it's time for the mother-son duo to part ways.
So my son, he's moving to Canada to work, so he has a job lined up over there for a couple of years, and I'm going to retire because I've been in the industry a long time.
47 years in fact, but that still didn't prepare Colette or Julian for so many noticing that they'll be signing off.
I didn't actually realise that many people cared. It's seen 13,500 people have seen it, and there's been over 100 comments, and so that's great. It's really nice.
The first day of October will be the cafe's final day of trade, and as for the church,
hopefully a couple will come in and say, hey, we could run this as a cafe because it'd be great for the town to keep it running, or someone will come in and say, oh, let's convert this into a house.
Jessie Gilmore, Southern Cross News.
The Greens are claiming the sale of Tasmania's public hardwood plantations is shrouded in secrecy. The Resources Minister continuing to defend the sale despite accusations of a dud deal. Guy Barnett says the $60 million sale of public forestry assets to a foreign-owned enterprise makes good financial sense.
To make it very clear, the indications from independent objective analysis between $1,500 and $2,000 a hectare, and we've received above that at the very high end.
This is a rip-off for taxpayers. They haven't released the contract, and the true owners of those plantations are being kept in the dark.
The new deal involves a commitment from the company for a locally sourced workforce. And a local baker making some unique and unusual creations has scored big on the national stage. Brighton's Best Bakehouse has been awarded for having the best gourmet pie in the country. But it's not all good news for the business.
Jason Mizzen has been baking here in Brighton for 16 years. His inspiration for new flavours comes from local produce.
It's always the key to any cooking is using good fresh produce, so we've got heaps of it here in Tasmania.
He's just returned from Sydney with some extra luggage. At national awards, the bakery's slow-cooked beef and caramelised onion pie was picked as the best gourmet pie.
I just keep trying to do new things, and I put a lot of research in. Obviously, when I'm doing it, I'm not a trained chef. I don't, know a lot about flavours. I'm a baker.
In the cabinet, there's some unusual pie creations: double beef burger, butter chicken, burrito, and a new one, the chicken palmy roll.
We have a chat about different options and what we think might work, and because at the end of the day, it's got to be a saleable product. And if you can't sell it, no good making it.
This creativity has become a necessity. The Brighton Bakehouse had been a staple for some doing the Midland Highway trip, but since the bypass opened skipping the town, it saw a drop in customers.
The bypass knocked part of the cream out of the business. So when you lose a chunk of your turnover, everything doesn't drop by that 10 to 15%. Wages doesn't drop, everything else, electricity doesn't drop. It's just your profit drops, which means you've got to work that little bit harder.
And they'll keep pushing the boundaries with more unusual creations on the way. Michael Breen, Southern Cross News.
Now a look at business and finance with thanks to Tasplan, your local super fund. The Australian share market has closed lower for a third consecutive session as North Korea's latest missile launch over Japan spooked investors. The ASX 200 index has dropped by 43.7 points. A short time ago, the Australian dollar was trading at just over 80 US cents and 67.15 euro cents.
To the TSL, and Launceston coach Sam Lonigan says his team's amazing finals form is a result of much more than just enthusiasm. He says a year-long focus on ball movement and protecting teammates is finally falling into place. Tomorrow, the Young Blues outfit will once again relish the underdog tag against Lauderdale in the prelim.
And what we're starting to see now within the players is some natural behaviours that weren't necessarily natural 9 months ago, and that's, you know, we've purely been able to do that through training and putting them in game scenarios.
The winner gets a ticket to the grand final against North Launceston. Local footy leagues around the state are preparing for their own grand finals this weekend. We begin our coverage in the Southern Football League, where New Norfolk is getting ready for another tilt at premiership glory against Lindisfarne. A powerhouse of the SFL, New Norfolk has been in 7 of the past 8 grand finals, tasting sweet success 5 times during that period. Now the Eagles aim to fly high once again.
The guys that have been there and done it before have been fantastic around the younger guys.
New Norfolk's only defeat this season came courtesy of Lindisfarne in the semi-final, a side featuring former Lauderdale skipper Michael Cassidy, the league's leading goal kicker, averaging 4 majors per game.
Try and relax and go about how I usually go about a game.
The two Blues, the bridesmaid in last year's decider. Tomorrow at North Hobart Oval, a chance to mark a new era for the club.
We've actually got only 12 players from last year's grand final, and 10 new players come in, so we were more about forging our own path, creating our own history.
Another blockbuster awaits in the NTFA Division 1 final at Windsor Park. Only percentage splits South Launceston and Bracknell at the end of the minor rounds.
They're a side that play well together, they play for each other, they're very physical.
Scrolling through September history, the Bulldogs are reliable performers, going back-to-back in 2014 and 15. Bracknell is starved of similar success.
20 years since we last won a grand final. Much red and white, whereas we can get to the ground and be fantastic, and I'm guaranteed you're in for a good game.
You don't want to have any regrets come 5 o'clock when the game's done.
And in the NWFL, Latrobe is seeking back-to-back flags when it takes on Ulverston.
Latrobe will be very keen to stop Ulverston getting the ball into their forward line, and Ulverston will be keen to stop the midfield from dominating for Latrobe.
The league expecting up to 4,000 fans at Darryl Baldock Oval for the clash. And the inaugural champion of the SFL Women's League will be decided tomorrow. South East Suns going in as favourites against Lindisfarne.
I think we're good in the midfield. If we can start off good there, then I think we might get a good lead.
We've had 4 encounters against the Suns, with the last 3 the margin's been under 4 points.
The bounce is at 11:10 at North Hobart Oval. To soccer, South Hobart is facing one of its biggest tests so far this season. The side is hosting Queensland NPL champion Brisbane Strikers at Darcy Street on Sunday as part of the NPL's National Final Series. Not shying away from the challenge, coach Ken Morton says he has nearly all hands on deck.
We'll go into the game and have a go. We won't, as I say, be afraid of them. We'll have a go at them.
One question mark remains over whether Oscar Thomas will keep his spot should injured defender Hugh Ludford pass a fitness test. And finally tonight, we are now 24 hours away from the brawl at City Hall. Hobart's Luke Jackson making weight this afternoon, ahead of the bout putting Jackson's 14-0 record and the WBO Oriental Featherweight title on the line. Jackson's opponent, Mexico's Humberto de Santiago, also made weight. An Action Jackson victory could see the 32-year-old jump into the top 5 in the world featherweight rankings.
Good evening, and as Joe said before the break, I'm a little on edge this evening, and even though I've had a fair go at sedating them, the nerves are still tingling, and the prospect of rain tonight isn't helping the cause too much, I don't think. But anyway, we'll see what we'll see a little bit later. What happened today was Hobart had 16, along with Devonport, 15 for Launceston and Burnie. Friendly Beaches keep serving up the nice weather, 18 today, fine over the northeast. A few showers elsewhere with a weak cold front passing over us today. St Helens and Campania 17, Wynyard, Bushy Park and King Island 15. Flinders Island, Low Head and Grove 14, Strawn a top of 13 degrees. There is cloud spiralling around a low to our south with a cold front also in that vicinity. We have a cold pool of air to our west and upper level trough brought cloud to Western Australia. Closer up, there's the cloud moving across the state with the cold air in behind. Tomorrow, the high near Adelaide extends a ridge our way, a cold front, and low moves south of Western Australia. Southwesterlies at 20 to 30 knots, but reaching 40 knots over southern waters during the morning. Swells to 5 metres. Road weather alert for most of the state. Snow and ice down to 200 metres. A gale warning from Wineglass Bay to Low Rocky Point. A strong wind warning for remaining coastal waters. Small craft wind alert for the lakes. A bushwalkers alert for the highlands. A warning to sheep graziers for most districts. Into Saturday we go, a showery one for Hobart, 11 the top. Cold start for Medina and Oatlands, both pressing to 9 degrees later. Launceston, an early frost, a possible shower and 13. 12 the top for Devonport with showers clearing. Lyowini, bit of snow. -4 and a top of 3. 12 for Burnie with showers clearing. 10 for Strawn, a windy day, and 11 for Marrawar. And 4 St Helens, possible shower. 13 for Swansea, Orford, a bit showery, and 12. Mostly sunny on Sunday after a fairly cold start. Showers developing on Monday over the west before spreading across the state during the afternoon and evening. Mainly fine on Tuesday apart from an early shower over the west and south. Partly cloudy and 24 in Perth. An early shower for Adelaide and Melbourne. Showers as well for Sydney and Canberra. And sunny conditions for centres in Queensland and the Territory. It's partly cloudy over Hobart, 9 degrees currently, 12 degrees in Launceston, bit of cloud over Devonport as well, and 10 degrees. Joe, I have stocked up on antihistamines. As you know, I have an allergy to cats.
Good luck to your mighty swans, Merv. Well, that's all from the team for now. Thanks so much for your company. Have a lovely evening. Good night.